we were commissioned to conduct one of these reviews by the Careers and Enterprise company. We were focusing largely on three kind of work-related learning activities, so work experience, job shadowing and workplace visits. And the reason for kind of grouping all these activities together, they obviously differ in terms of their structure and intensity, but essentially they're all common in the sense that they provide young people with direct exposure to workplaces and use workplaces as a context for learning as well. So young people can get the opportunity to learn about different industries, different workplaces, work practices. They can also get the opportunity to practice the skills necessary for employment in that area. And also, yeah, as I say, in the case of work experience, they get the opportunity to actually practice those skills. So just to run through kind of what the research broadly aimed to do, it was to summarize the research literature, as I said, on these three forms of work-related learning. Given the remit of the Careers and Enterprise company, we were focusing on the impacts for young people. And he also asked us to highlight lessons for good practice in this area as well. You know, for people working in this area, you know, what are the key things they need to bear in mind when they're designing and delivering these activities to ensure that they're most effective for the young people they support. Another aim was to assess the quality of the evidence base and make suggestions for how it could be improved. So this is essentially coming to a summative judgment about to what degree of certainty can we say that participating in a certain activity leads to, you know, X outcome. How we did that, I won't bore you too much with the details, but we did a kind of semi-systematic literature search, 6 academic databases, and grey literature sources, so things like Department for Education website, NFER, Education Employers is a good resource for these kind of reviews. And yeah, we basically applied various kind of inclusion-exclusion criteria and got down to a short list of around 45 papers that kind of have formed the basis of our research. So it's not exhaustive, but we're pretty sure, at least, you know, in the UK context, we've captured kind of some of the kind of key pieces of research that have been published in this area kind of in the last 20 years. So I just want to give you a brief run through of kind of what we found broadly before going into more detail. So there was plenty of formative evidence that suggests work experience is effective. It's by far the most commonly researched topic in this area, you know, perhaps because, well, you know, it's one of the most common kind of careers education interventions, and also it's quite an intensive intervention as well. So it's perhaps easier to kind of quantify the impact of participating in the 2-week placement versus, you know, a half a day in a workplace, or, you know, 2 days in a workplace. We found very little on job shadowing workplace visits, and as such, you know, most of the findings I'm going to present focus on work experience, and the recommendations are pretty much, you know, entirely related to work experience. Although there is some discussion on job shadowing workplace visits in the report that we're producing off the back of this. Overall, the strength of the evidence base is quite weak, however, and I'm going to go into some more details about why that's the case in a second. But basically, the key messages that we took out of this review is that I think we really need to think carefully about the roles that work-related learning plays in young people's careers education. In particular, work experience. You know, there's been a policy shift recently to provide these opportunities for young people over the age of 16, off the back of the Wolf Review. You know, Wolf's analysis was that work experience is effective in developing a young person's employability skills, and therefore, you know, in the interest of cost effectiveness, these opportunities should be provided when a young person is kind of closer to entering the labour market after the age of 16. But actually, you know, the evidence suggests a wide range of impacts associated, as well as employability skills. And it also suggests that early exposure is kind of just as beneficial, particularly in helping young people in their career decision making. And, you know, the main emphasis for us is that this really shouldn't be overlooked, kind of in light of these recent policy changes. You know, however, not all young people, you know, get the opportunity to share in these benefits, and clearly the evidence base shows that there are social inequalities really affect access to high quality opportunities, and really we need to think about the ways in which these can be addressed if all young people are going to, as I say, get a share in these benefits, and these social inequalities aren't going to continue and be reproduced in the labour market at a later age. So just to talk about the quality of the evidence base to begin with. So there's a few kind of main limitations to note. So first of all, there's a lack of objective outcome measures. So what we mean by this is most of the research evidence is survey research. It's interviews and focus groups with young people, and those involved in designing and delivering work experience or other activities. And as such, most of the research evidence focuses on kind of short to medium term impacts, and it's based on the subjective opinion of kind of interviewees or survey respondents. And it's mainly focused on kind of softer impacts as well, like a young person's personal and social development. And what we don't have is research that's used objective outcome measures, so administrative data sources, to track a young person's later kind of educational and employment outcomes as a result of participating in work experience. Kind of that's something that we're really lacking. We're also lacking robust evaluation techniques, so the use of, a comparison group, a control group, so we can really isolate the impact of participating, as I say, in one of these activities. So I'm just going to talk about briefly the kind of some of the impacts that we found in the evidence base before going on to kind of the main lessons that we pulled out from this exercise. So the main one that's worth noting is student satisfaction. So, survey evidence shows young people generally satisfied with their experience. They like participating in work experience. However, there's some evidence out there which suggests that young people actually find, if they find the experience more challenging, they'll be more highly satisfied with the work placement. And I'll come back to some of the reasons why that might be the case in a second. Another outcome that I'm sure you're all familiar with is employability skills development. So these are, I'm sure you're aware of kind of the main kind of employability skills which I've listed there.